War in Gaza, war in Ukraine, migration and, of course, climate change. There's no shortage of global challenges, but are there solutions out there? We're joined in studio by Mary Robinson, former President of Ireland and UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, and now Chair of the Elders, a group of former international leaders who try to provide solutions to just those type of tricky international problems. And perhaps, Mary Robinson, we could start with Gaza, with the UN, the Security Council, fumbling its way towards a solution. How important is it that a resolution actually gets passed and isn't vetoed by the United States?
Resolution of the Security Council is important because it is legally binding. Now, how binding and how much it will be implemented is another matter, but it does have that standing in the UN system. Whereas if this were to fail, it would go to the General Assembly, where there's a huge majority now in favour of a ceasefire, basically, but certainly a cessation of hostilities. And that's non-binding in that sense. It would put pressure on the US as well as on Israel once you have a UN Security Council resolution to make sure it's implemented.
But of course the US has a veto and the US appears to be the stumbling block to the current resolution.
I would hope this one will get through. The fact that they're struggling with wording makes me hope that they will actually get a resolution.
What about the position of the US? Because it's not so long ago that, along with many other people, you were welcoming Joe Biden to Ballina, your hometown. And yet now I think you've said that he's losing international respect because of his stance. Did we misjudge Joe Biden?
It's not easy because, as you say, I'm a friend of Joe Biden's for a long number of years, and we had a very warm exchange when he was in Ireland. But sometimes you just have to speak truth to power. And the truth is the United States is losing respect, is losing credibility, basically, as a powerful nation even. It's looking weak because it has called on Israel, and this is the Israeli government. It's actually a bad government. It's a very right-wing government. It's got a very bad leader, Prime Minister Netanyahu, who really cares about himself more than anything else. And he has to stay in power now, or he may be put in jail. I mean, he's facing a number of different charges, and he could be facing charges of breaches of international humanitarian law. But the point really is that the United States has called for restraint, but this government is not listening, the Israeli government, and then it hasn't put conditions on its military support. And the elders, some time ago, we called for those with a power of restraining through the conditionality on the military aid to do it. And that would be the United States and the United Kingdom in particular. And President Biden actually bypassed Congress to provide more military aid. And therefore, the United States is increasingly complicit. And it's really worrying because we're seeing now, the blocking of the shipping, the Houthis, and from Yemen, and this is a widening, and people are getting very impatient with what's happening. So I'm really hopeful that we will understand the importance of getting humanitarian aid in because of the appalling situation. The head of UNRWA came and talked to the elders, and I nearly cried when I listened to him. It is appalling what has happened. I've never known anything like it. It's as bad as I've ever seen.
And yet we've had Israeli spokespeople on this programme and on others, and you'll know what they'll say. They'll say, and the Americans will support them in this, that a ceasefire will help Hamas. Hamas will regroup, Hamas will rebuild, and Hamas will plan further atrocities.
Well, I think we need to know what the game plan is anyway for this war on Hamas. What is the objective at the end of the day? What is the exit strategy, the peace at the end that must be worked for? It is a two-state solution. So let's have some more discussion about that. And, I think the fact that there would be a pause doesn't necessarily mean, because obviously already there's, a huge destruction that has happened. But it's the destruction of people's lives, the killing of children. What is happening is really shocking.
On another topic close to your heart, you're not long back from Dubai, from COP28. Does the agreement that was reached there last week look any better with a bit of distance than it did at the time?
I think it is a positive outcome from a COP that could have been very, very difficult indeed. It started well with the agreement on loss and damage. And some funding, not nearly enough, into that, which gave a certain momentum. And then the big fight was to get that wording of phasing out fossil fuel. we got the transitioning from, which is really interesting because it's the first time in 28 COPs that fossil fuel has been mentioned. It's always been possible to avoid it. And I think it's very significant that the only party to the COP that didn't stand and applaud at the end was Saudi Arabia, because they had opposed tooth and nail mentioning fossil fuel. Don't mention what's causing the harm, please. Let's talk about emissions and then carbon capture. And there was a big lobby for carbon capture, you know.
Which would be great if it works.
Yeah. But actually, the reason I think we have something to work with in this is we have the next conference, which is in another petrostate, Azerbaijan, in Baku, is about finance. And during this year, into 2024, we're going to have to work very hard to open up the coffers of the world, to have, maybe it's a levy on fossil fuel, which Minister Eamon Ryan is looking for. Maybe it's a tax. Maybe it's a tax on aviation, on shipping. All of these are now on the table. The wonderful Bridgetown initiative of Prime Minister Mia Mottley. I'm a great fan of hers. She's a wonderful woman. And there are so many things to work on now with a good president of the World Bank. President Aja Banda, he actually was a member of the B team of business leaders that I'm also involved in. And I know that he would have a lot of support from the private sector. And he's now trying to move the World Bank. So this year about finance will build the trust again that we can help to get the tripling of renewable energy, particularly for developing countries. Let them leapfrog into renewable energy, to get the doubling of energy efficiency, to get all the things that were promised, and the food security. The food initiatives were good, the health initiatives were good. We have a lot to build on.
OK, we get the money next year, hopefully anyway. But thank you for joining us on 6-1, Mary Robinson.
Thank you.